Hello, welcome to GameGazm. I'm Byrne.
I'm Jay.
And today it's Halloween. Yeah, that was good, that was. What are we doing today, Jay?
Well, in the spirit of the season, we've put together a journey through horror with all of our friends on the YouTubes from around the world.
Yes, a documentary about all the things that go bump in the night and the things that make you scream with fright.
Just roll the film.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Welcome, one and all, to this trip through horror, and our spooky journey begins with, what is horror? Well, since the dawn of time, us humans have experienced fear, a lot of fear, and we're fascinated by it. It's a genre that has much appeal to people seeking a thrill, and it all started with moving pictures like Nosferatu and Dr. Caligari's Cabinet back in the 1920s. Horror has been told through stories by mouth, around campfires, on screen with movies, and solidified with famous creatures of the night with the Universal Monster Pictures. But skipping ahead to the video game boom of the 80s, there was now a way you could interact with the fear, and it was here that the great horror game genre started.
Millions of people are addicted to hours of gazing at electronic images on game screens in arcades and in their own homes.
The early days were very, well, basic, with the likes of 3D Monster Maze and Haunted House from 1982. These were, in their day, the best horror games. Haunted House was an explorative style game where you guided a character around a dark house. It was clever in the way that the only part of the character you could see were his eyes. It introduced an element of fear by players not wanting to get caught by the game's enemies. Spiders that would chase you, ghosts and other boomerangs would hamper your progress as you made your way around.
3D Monster Maze was set to have really pushed the boundaries of the ZX81 with its impressive 3D visual style. It was basically a randomly generated maze where a big dinosaur could chase you, find you, and eat you. It was primitive, but does it sound familiar? Yep, later these elements would be brought into games like Monstrum and Slender Man, for example.
But sticking with the 80s for now, we had a slew of horror-styled games, with the likes of Castlevania, Ghosts and Goblins, and Shadowgate that offered eerie experiences and scary themes. As kids, these games did make us feel fear. Shadowgate was particularly eerie for me with its cold, dank environment and grim exploration. The monsters you encountered were strange and could kill you in an instant if you didn't know what to do. The early horror games wouldn't perhaps scare you today, but back then they could leave some lasting impressions on us feeble-minded past folk.
Well, my first experience with a horror game, it wasn't actually a horror game, I guess. It was Space Quest 4 on the PC, and I got this disc. It was with a bunch of other discs that you used to get with PCs back in the day, and I started playing it, point and click adventure, and it was quite humorous in most places. It was kind of like a rip-off of Star Wars, starring Roger Wilco and all this kind of stuff. But there was a bit where you were on this planet, and you were like sent into the future through a time hole, and as you do, and you were walking around this kind of like desolate futuristic city, and there was a bit where this kind of thing, this guy was walking around, and he'd come up to you, and if he caught you, it would cut to a full screen like animation of this guy's face, and it was all twisted up and weird, and he was going, "Arr!" And it just freaked me the hell out. I was only young, and this guy's face it haunts me today. I've got it in my brain right now. I can just picture it clear as day. So yeah, that was my first experience.
We're glad you could play Space Quest 4.
Okay, my two favorite horror games as a kid, I know, like,
These are good.
I know. Okay, Addams Family, because it's a great platform. I know a lot of people say this game's really hard, and a lot of people are like, it's not a horror game. It's a really good horror game. Just because it's got the theme of Addams Family, there's skeletons, there's spooks, there's specters, there's a lot of spooky factors in this game. Very hard game, and it kind of did give you kind of a little bit of chills every time you enter each room. The other game that I liked was Haunting, and I love how you're just like, oh, it's all retro. Haunting starring Poltergeist, where you play as this undead I guess he'd have to be undead because he's a boulder guy. And he has to haunt this family out of the house. And I guess you could say this officially is the first jump scare game, because you jump into like paintings and pianos and stuff, and when the family comes up to it, like blood oozes out things, or like an eyeball comes out of a clock and stuff. And it was just that sort of like, it was just creepy. It was a very creepy game, and it was probably one of my favorites as a kid.
As the games improved, so did the tech, and with the home PC becoming more of a common occurrence in households, a game arrived called Doom. Another genre-defining title in the world of horror. The first first-person shooter to enter the mainstream arena was Wolfenstein 3D, and has since been hailed as the granddaddy of the genre, but Doom was the first horror shooter, pitting you as a lone space marine against the hordes of hell itself.
So I think my first experience with a horror game is probably playing Doom back on the PC. I think I kind of started out as like a PC gamer, and I just remember running around Doom, and you could hear sort of monsters and all sort of goes through the walls, and it used to creep me out. And it seems really tame by today's standards, and it kind of is, but I played it recently and it's still like really hard. If you whack the difficulty up, oh my god, it's so hard, it's so fast and rapid.
It was a marked improvement over Wolfenstein 3D and had people terrified for hours on end. It was fast, brutal and filled with creepy moments. id Software would carry on this spooky shooter vibe in their next title, Quake.
Because I'm an ID fanboy, obviously, naturally my favourite sort of game was Quake, which was their next game. And yeah, I was awesome at it. I mean, it used to scare the crap out of me, but I got so good at it. I used to speedrun the game. I thought I could do it in like half an hour, just rocket jumping everywhere like a nutter. And then obviously got to like Quake 4 and I was like, oh, rocket jump, boom, and I'm dead. And I was like, no, this isn't Quake anymore. So Quake's probably my all-time favourite game.
PlayStation. Yes, friends, I'm talking about this.
Moving the timeline forward to '96, the PlayStation 1 was launched, and with it came many horror titles, some obvious and some not so obvious.
My first experience with a horror game would be a game called Spider on the PlayStation 1. It was the first time I was ever... I know, it's already Spider. It's a game, it's not a very well-known game on PlayStation 1, and it's about a scientist who invents this really, like, intelligent spider with, like, little gun arms and gun legs. And this guy, I know it sounds so weird, and then this guy comes in and guns down the scientist, and you've got to go murder the people that murdered your scientist father, and you play a tiny spider that crawls along shelves. And ever since then, I only played it once because I had to return it because it just scared me. That story scares me.
Yeah.
But obviously everyone knows that Resident Evil was the first true survival horror.
Whoa, now, hang on.
Okay, yes, there is another. A similar game known as Alone in the Dark that was released in '92 on the PC to fair reception of the gaming community. But everyone remembers Resident Evil more as it launched a console and firmly clutched the tagline survival horror. And since then, that phrase has become the descriptive word that every game in the genre uses. Hailed for its amazing visuals, CD quality sound, and intense puzzle-fueled horror, Resident Evil gave us all chills. The monsters were scary, the environment atmosphere was tense, and man did it make us scared.
Resident Evil.
My first experience with a horror game would be Resident Evil on the original PlayStation. Now, coming from a background of mainly Final Fantasy and games that were safe, because it was random encounters, there was no enemies wandering around, going to something like Resident Evil where they would just pop out of nowhere, that was terrifying. I'm not used to dealing with enemies actually on screen and quick thinking.
Jay over there from GameGazm used to live opposite me, and he used to have his PlayStation in his garage. Don't know what a garage. He'd open the garage and you could see opposite that he was on it. So I'd just leg it over. And then one day I went over, he had Resident Evil, the first one in the mansion. And of course, the memory of seeing Barry Burton say, "Whoa, you're almost a Jill sandwich," will always live with me.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. My first experience with a horror game was probably Resident Evil 2 back when I was 6, but obviously with age ratings it wasn't me who was playing it was actually my dad who was playing it, but I would always watch him play it in the living room, even down to the point like I would act out certain things. Like I would walk around the living room. We actually had like a record case box that you could open up, and whenever you go to a save box I'd go over to it and open it up and close it. But any scary parts would absolutely terrify me. I'd be throwing myself behind a pillow
Being a genre-defining game, Resident Evil would influence the future devs and game designers to go wild with this new horror style, and many games started to emerge on the scene. Silent Hill, Obscure, Fatal Frame and many more all derived from the success of that first Resident Evil title's fame.
Alright, first experience of a horror game as a kid would have to go back to Silent Hill on the PS1. That game freaked me out something cruel. Like the fact that you can't even see like 2 meters in front of you because of all the fog everywhere. You don't know what's coming up next. The constant static in your ears, like that was just freaky as hell. The little dogs that would just come out of nowhere that didn't have any skin on them. That was just freaky, man. Like that game, that was a scary game. Scary, scary game. I don't think I'd actually finished it because I think I was just too scared to finish it. But what a game.
Silent Hill was impressive as it didn't rely on jump scares or shock factor like the Resident Evil series did before it. It was a different type of horror, the kind that would freak you out with its horrifying imagery and atmosphere. It was tense, and even when nothing was happening on screen, you never felt at ease.
The trend of scary games would continue, with the genre spreading around to other game types.
I love zombies and stuff like that, so I guess it would classify as horror, and it would have to be Left 4 Dead 1 or Left 4 Dead 2. I loved those games so much. I played so many hours. That game would have you on the edge of your seat like all the time, I reckon, because you know you'd be walking down like a quiet strip and all of a sudden you're hearing like the hunter noise, the growl of the hunter, and you don't know where he's coming from. You're looking around and suddenly, bam, he just pounces on you and he starts crawling you and you're just going crazy like, help, help, help.
Fear is a basic human emotion. What frightens you more? The evil that you know? Or the evil that you don't know?
The Fear series was a huge success when it first arrived on PC and managed to scare people in all new terrible ways.
My favourite horror game by far has to be the Fear series. I absolutely love them.
Probably 15, and I was playing Fear on my boyfriend's computer, my first boyfriend.
On the computer?
Yeah, on the computer.
Wow, okay.
I think it was a shitty little laptop something. Yeah, I was a bit of a chicken. A bit of a chicken.
I actually started them back when they first came out when I was 13 alongside my best friend, and him and I both went through it side by side. He would do more of the shooting levels because I'm pretty crap at stealth. I just kind of end up using all of our ammo and then we're screwed for any part after that. But he would normally take over those parts and I'd end up doing all the scary parts, which was perfect, wasn't it? Actually, one point I do remember throwing myself back away from the computer screen and hiding behind a pillow and having to calm down for about 10 minutes with a chocolate bar.
However, as reviewers eventually began to criticise the genre of becoming stagnant, and with a lot of players becoming fed up of the cumbersome controls, survival horror evolved to be more action orientated, and once again leading the charge was Capcom with Resident Evil 4. Their ambitions paid off as it was very well received, but it also led some reviewers to suggest that the Resident Evil series had lost the survival horror conventions that it once established.
So horror games now, like in the mainstream industry, I feel that they've kind of lost their way a little bit, or that at least they did. Now they're kind of coming back, but it was mainly with like successful franchises. Like I'd find like Dead Space 1, incredible, really scary from beginning to end, deep dark story. And then the second one was like more of the same, kind of but a bit bigger. And then the third one, they decided to make it like Call of Duty co-op with microtransactions and a cover shooter.
And then bringing it back, The Evil Within. Once again, they've lost what survival horror is. They think survival horror is just being insanely difficult. I thought the scares were gone, and it just wasn't great. Wasn't great.
Yes, Evil Within was supposed to be a dramatic return to form for the survival horror genre, and with Resident Evil director Shinji Mikami on board, it was dead set to be a winner. But sadly it failed to touch upon the greatness it once had, with some reviewers citing it as being a bad Resident Evil 4 clone. Ouch!
Aside from the game being more difficult than scary, there was also a noticeable disconnection from the main character and supporting roles.
I think as long as if they can drag you into them and really make you feel the emotions with them, especially like The Last of Us, Joel and Ellie, like that kind of relationship, I think you really need to feel that.
Obviously games like The Last of Us, the storytelling element has just been is incredible now. They are like films, they're written like films, and they've got like proper actors to act them out, and now it's incredible, especially with the new technology as well.
But due to the budgets for blockbuster games like The Last of Us being so massive, and there being a necessity to make a game that everyone would purchase, developers were often restricted by the publishers as to what game mechanics work in the mass market.
It just feels like that they've been trying to cater to everyone rather than the niche audience that likes survival horror.
I think people are trying too hard.
Yeah, that's
nowadays.
it. Like trying too hard with those like zombies and.
There's a lot of zombie stuff.
We've killed it.
But now they're learning from the indie devs at the moment, and they're coming back with these unique experiences like Alien Isolation.
Thanks to games like Amnesia and games like Outlast, they've changed things up, and what's happened there is filtered into AAA games, and there's been a resurgence in horror games.
To make you believe.
And boy, did the indie scene explode. Horror gaming was taken to new levels, with indies trying out new things and testing the boundaries of everyone's fear factor. And with successes like Slenderman and Five Nights at Freddy's, the indie sector was finally giving AAA a run for its money.
Oh, it's the future. Oh man, it's just brilliant. The fact that someone can just sit in their flat for 5 years, panicking and just sweating absolute blood over it, and then coming up and releasing it, and it's just huge. I mean, Outlast is just, that is just genius. I mean, using your only weapon's a video camera with night vision.
New indie horrors, they're the guys that are basically saying what works and what doesn't work for the AAA industry, really.
Indie horrors at the moment, I think, are absolutely brilliant. I mean, obviously you've got, you know, the typical like Slenderman. I mean, I went through Outlast not long ago, and I think they're getting really clever. I love the fact that indie games are coming to rise now. I think that's just brilliant.
I just think it's really cool that one person's, like, someone can make a game based on how they would want to play a game, instead of a big corporation with billions going, oh, we can't do that because these people won't buy it. We can't do that. That's how they're thinking. Whereas an indie game is like, I don't really care if it's popular, I'm doing this for me.
They're so important for this industry, not just the horror genre, but the entire gaming industry in general. It's so easy for people to get hold of these engines now and be able to code things on their own and try different things. It's almost like we're getting the video game boom of the 80s back, but with more modern technology, and it's really an exciting time.
And not only was the indie sector giving inspiration to the AAA market, they were also focused on bringing back old classics, giving them a new lease of life. Check out Brutal Doom, for example. Its roots firmly placed with the original game from id Software, but added gore, more guns, death moves, explosions, brand new levels and multiplayer gameplay. Not only Doom, but a small indie team hell-bent on remaking Resident Evil 2 actually got Capcom's attention, and were since hired to help work on a proper remake of Resident Evil 2 with the Capcom dev team.
Things sometimes go bad too, like when Silent Hills was teased to much critical acclaim only to be cancelled shortly after its announcement. But the indie sector was there to pick up the big Konami ball.
With games like PT, everyone wanted PT, the Silent Hills, and when that got cancelled, an indie dev team jumped on Allison Road, and that's what everyone wants. That is going to be incredible. But also, you know, indie developers are paving the way for how the future is going to go with what we've seen Alien Isolation. That was based on games like Outlast, which don't give you anything.
And it keeps getting stronger with the emergence of a new brand of indie AAA. Once bigger studios are now downsizing to take risks and make the games that they are passionate about.
So what does the future of horror gaming hold for us? How will it change in the mainstream industry? And are the indie devs now becoming the future AAA developers?
In the future, I can see the horror genre sort of going more down the virtual reality sort of route if VR takes off.
You're in the streets with axe murderers trying to chase you down and you're running away from them, and you know, in virtual reality that could look pretty amazing.
Any like Oculus Rift, like being immersed more.
I think it's going to get far more interactive, especially with the Oculus Rift, which is just, like, especially when they introduce that to mainstream with Alien Isolation.
Take out some of the jump scares, because you don't want it to be all about it, and just make sure you build this relationship. If you can make the person who's playing it really feel the emotions that the character in the game is going through, then you've won.
It's already terrifying when you're just looking at a screen. So can you imagine being immersed even more into that? To, you know, feeling like you are actually there, and the reality of it is what they're striving towards, and I think we're pretty close to getting it.
So, from the beginning of our fascination with horror and things that go bump in the night, to now where we're constantly trying to find a new scare, it's been a hell of a ride, and horror is a genre that will always evolve to the world around us. With the fresh minds of the indie developers rising up to change the genre for the next generation and fuel a new era of horror gaming, we think it's only going to get scarier. So, grab your pillows, get out your Halloween candy, and get settled in with your favourite horror game and play the night away. Sleep tight, gamers.
And there you go, so that was our journey through horror and some of our earliest memories.
Yeah, and don't forget to leave us a comment in the comment section telling us about your first experiences with a horror game, because I'm sure there's some other fantastic stories around the internet about how you first got into horror gaming. So yeah, please leave your comments down below. And also, we'd like to say an absolutely massive thank you to everyone that was involved. Retro Bros, Screen Fiends, Shady Corner, and of course, Autistic Genius. You've been great, and we couldn't have done this without you, really.
No, and it was really great meeting all of you and working with you on this, and well, we just hope everyone enjoyed what we put together.
Yeah, and more in the future, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you want to hit us up with a collab, then please make sure, just contact us, throw us an email or comment or whatever you like, and maybe in the future we can do something together. So anyway, that's all the time we've got for today. I hope you have a fantastic Halloween, eat too many sweets, drink too much alcohol, scare too many people, and have a wonderful time. I've been Bren.
I've been Jay.
And we've been GameGazm.